I found my mother doing squats at the gym 3 days after she supposedly started her final round of chemotherapy. The woman who had been dying of stage 4 cancer for 2 years was deadlifting more weight than I could handle. My hands trembled as I watched her through the window, completely healthy, completely alive, completely lying. I'd given her $45,000 over those 2 years. $45,000 that I'd scraped together from my pharmacist's salary, money I'd borrowed against my own future, because I couldn't let my mother die without trying everything. Every experimental treatment she mentioned, every specialist consultation, every urgent medical bill. I'd paid for it all. "Mom," I called out as I entered the gym. She froze mid-squat, her face going white when she saw me. Not the pale white of a cancer patient, but the guilty white of someone caught red-handed. "Natasha, honey, I can explain." "Explain what?" "Explain how you're miraculously cured? Explain how you've been lying to me for 2 years." My voice carried across the gym, drawing stares from other members. She grabbed my arm, trying to pull me toward a corner. "Lower your voice. We can talk about this at home." "No." I shook her off. "We'll talk about this right here, right now. Are you sick, Mom? Are you dying?" The silence stretched between us like a chasm. "It's complicated," she finally whispered. "It's really not." I pulled out my phone and started recording. "Tell me, Mom, do you have cancer?" Her eyes darted around the gym, looking for an escape that didn't exist. "Natasha, please. Do you have cancer?" "No." The word came out barely audible. "But I needed the money, honey. Your father left us with nothing, and Kevin said it would just be temporary." "Kevin?" "My cousin, the doctor who'd been providing all those official-looking medical reports. The same Kevin who'd been pushing for more aggressive treatments, more expensive procedures." I stopped recording and stared at her. This woman who had taught me about honesty, about helping people, about the sacred trust between patients and medical professionals. This woman who had raised me to believe that lying about illness was one of the most despicable things a person could do. "I'm going to destroy you," I said quietly. She blinked, as if she hadn't heard correctly. "What?" I said, "I'm going to destroy you. Both of you." I left her standing there in her workout clothes, probably wondering if I was bluffing. She'd find out soon enough that I wasn't. Back at my apartment, I spread out 2 years' worth of medical documents across my dining table. Kevin's letterhead, fake test results, prescription recommendations for medications that didn't exist for the condition my mother supposedly had. As a pharmacist, I should have caught the inconsistencies earlier, but I'd been too emotional, too desperate to save her. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Please call me. We need to talk." I ignored it and called my colleague instead. "Dr. Patel? It's Natasha. I need your help with something. It's about medical fraud." An hour later, Dr. Patel sat across from me, examining the fake documents with the eye of someone who'd spent 20 years in oncology. "These are remarkably sophisticated forgeries," he said, adjusting his glasses. "But there are tells. See this drug combination? It would never be prescribed for the cancer type listed here. And these lab values." He shook his head. "Whoever made these knew enough to be dangerous, but not enough to be convincing to a real oncologist." "What's the penalty for this kind of fraud?" "Medical license revocation, certainly. Criminal charges for insurance fraud if they billed anyone. And if patients were harmed by following these fake recommendations." He looked up at me. "You said this was your family?" "My mother and cousin." He was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry, Natasha. This kind of betrayal. I can't imagine." "Don't be sorry. Be helpful. How do we expose them?" The plan was simple. Give them enough rope to hang themselves. I called my mother and arranged to meet at Kevin's office, supposedly to discuss her treatment options. "I've been thinking," I told her over the phone. "Maybe we should try that experimental treatment Kevin mentioned. The one that costs $20,000. I could hear the relief in her voice. "Oh, honey, I'm so glad you're not angry anymore. I knew you'd understand once you calmed down." Understand? I understood perfectly. I understood that she'd been playing on my love and fear for 2 years. I understood that she'd stolen more money from me than some people made in a year. And I understood that she thought I was weak enough to let it continue. She was wrong. Kevin's office was everything you'd expect from a small-time con artist trying to look legitimate. Fancy diplomas on the wall, expensive furniture, and a receptionist who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Natasha. Kevin stood up when I entered, arms spread wide for a hug I didn't return. Your mother told me you two worked things out. We did. I sat down across from his desk and pulled out a tablet. I want to record today's consultation for my records. Medical decisions are so complex, I don't want to miss anything. He hesitated for just a moment. Of course. Professional documentation is always wise. For the next 30 minutes, I let him spin an elaborate web of lies about my mother's condition, the urgency of treatment, the experimental drugs that could save her life. Every word was recorded in high definition. Pause here. What would you do if you discovered your own family member was faking a serious illness? Would you confront them immediately or gather evidence first? Let me know in the comments. Now, I said when he finished, I need to see her actual medical records. The real ones from her actual oncologist. Kevin's smile faltered. I am her oncologist, Natasha. No, Kevin. You're a family practice doctor with a suspended license. I checked. The room went silent. My mother's face had gone gray. I don't know what you think you're doing, Kevin said, his voice tight, but you're way out of line. I stood up and walked to his diploma wall. Johns Hopkins Medical School, class of 2015. Impressive. Except Johns Hopkins has no record of you graduating. I called them yesterday. Natasha, stop, my mother whispered. Stop? Stop what, Mom? Stop protecting people who need help? Stop being a pharmacist who actually cares about patient safety? Stop being your daughter who loves you enough to pay for your medical care. I turned back to Kevin. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to write a letter to the medical board confessing to the fraud. You're going to return every penny you stole from insurance companies. And you're going to pray that when this hits the news, your patients don't see you into oblivion. You can't prove anything, he said, but his hands were shaking. I held up my tablet. 30 minutes of you claiming to treat cancer you know she doesn't have. Prescribing treatments for conditions that don't exist. And the best part? You just admitted on camera that you're practicing medicine with a suspended license. Kevin's face went white. As for you, Mom, I turned to face her, you have 48 hours to return the $45,000 you stole from me. If you don't, I'm filing a police report for fraud and a civil suit for damages. I don't have that kind of money, she said. Then you better figure it out. Sell the car you bought with my money. Sell the jewelry. Sell whatever you need to sell. Natasha, please. I'm your mother. No. A mother doesn't steal from her child. A mother doesn't fake cancer for money. A mother doesn't manipulate her daughter's love and fear for 2 years. I headed for the door. You're just a con artist who happened to give birth to me. The call came at 6 a.m. the next morning. Dr. Patel's voice was urgent. Natasha, you need to see the news. Channel 7 is running an investigation into medical fraud. Your cousin's name came up. I turned on the TV to find a reporter standing outside Kevin's office building. Discovered that Dr. Kevin Martinez has been practicing with a suspended license for over 3 years. According to our investigation, Martinez lost his license following multiple malpractice suits and was caught prescribing medications for conditions patients didn't have. My phone started ringing. First my mother, then my Aunt Barbara, then numbers I didn't recognize. I turned off the phone and went to work. My supervisor at the hospital pharmacy called me into her office that afternoon. Natasha, I heard about the news story. About your family. I can explain. You don't need to explain anything. You did the right thing. Medical fraud hurts everyone, patients, families, the entire healthcare system. She paused. I want you to know that if you need time off to deal with this, you have our full support. Thank you, but I'd rather work. Helping real patients with real medications feels important right now. She nodded. There's something else. The state medical board wants to interview you about your cousin's activities. They're reviewing all his cases for the past 5 years. 5 years. How many patients had Kevin endangered with his fake treatments? How many families had he bilked out of their savings? That evening, I found my mother sitting on my apartment building's front steps. "Security won't let me up," she said without looking at me. "Smart security. I brought you this." She held out a check. "It's everything I have. 22,000. It's not enough, but it's all I can do right now." I looked at the check, then at her. She looked older somehow, smaller. "What about the rest?" "I'll get it. I'll work. I'll pay you back monthly. It might take years, but I'll do it." I folded the check and put it in my pocket. "You know the police are going to arrest you." "I know. You know Kevin's going to blame everything on you to save himself." "I know that too." We stood there in the growing darkness, two strangers who used to be family. "Why?" I asked. "Why did you do this to me?" She was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. "Because you were the only one who believed me. Your father, your siblings, your aunts and uncles, they all saw through me years ago. But you loved me enough to believe anything I told you." She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. I kept telling myself it was temporary. Just until I got back on my feet. But then it became easy. Too easy. Do you know what this has cost me? Not just the money. The guilt I felt about not being able to do more. The nights I stayed awake researching treatments. The relationships I avoided because I was spending everything on your medical bills. I know. No, you don't. You don't know that I was going to propose to David until I realized I couldn't afford a ring because I was paying for your chemo. You don't know that I turned down a promotion that required relocation because I couldn't leave you while you were sick. Her face crumpled. "Natasha, you stole 2 years of my life, Mom. 2 years I can never get back." I walked past her toward the building entrance. "Are you going to forgive me?" she called after me. I stopped but didn't turn around. "I don't know. But I do know I'll never trust you again." The trial made local news for 3 weeks. Kevin got 18 months in federal prison and permanent revocation of his medical license. My mother pleaded guilty to fraud and got probation plus restitution. The prosecutor asked me to give a victim impact statement. "Medical fraud isn't just about money," I told the court. "It's about trust. When someone fakes illness, they're not just stealing money, they're stealing the love and concern of people who care about them. They're poisoning the well of compassion that makes families and communities work." I looked at my mother, sitting next to her public defender. For 2 years, I lived in fear that I might lose my mother. I skipped meals to pay for her treatments. I worked extra shifts to afford her medications. I cried myself to sleep worrying about her pain. And all of that fear, all of that sacrifice, all of that love, it was based on a lie. Here's the question that haunts me. Was I right to turn in my own mother? Some of you might think family should come first, no matter what. Others might say justice had to be served. What's your take on this impossible choice? After the hearing, my Aunt Barbara approached me in the hallway. "Your mother wants to know if you'll visit her." "No. She's family, Natasha. Family doesn't do what she did to me. Everyone makes mistakes. Mistakes are forgetting to call on someone's birthday." This was 2 years of deliberate, calculated theft and manipulation. Barbara looked hurt. "So that's it? You're just going to cut her out of your life?" She cut herself out of my life the day she decided to fake cancer for money. 6 months later, I got a letter from my mother. She was working as a cashier at a grocery store, living in a studio apartment, paying me back $50 a month. "I know you probably won't read this," the letter began, "but I need you to know that not a day goes by that I don't regret what I did. Not because I got caught, but because I hurt the one person who loved me unconditionally." She was right about one thing. I almost didn't read it. "I've started seeing a therapist," the letter continued. "She says I need to take responsibility for my actions without expecting forgiveness. So, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you to know that I understand what I took from you, and I'm sorry." At the bottom, she'd written, "The woman at the gym that day, that wasn't your real mother. Your real mother would never have hurt you like this." I don't know where she went, but I'm trying to find her again. I folded the letter and put it in my desk drawer, next to a photo of us from my pharmacy school graduation. In the picture, she looked proud. I looked happy. That was before I knew that the person I trusted most in the world was capable of looking me in the eye and lying about dying. A year after the trial, I was processing prescriptions when I noticed something odd. A prescription for a cancer medication, but the drug interaction profile didn't match the supposed diagnosis. Dr. Chin, I called to the attending physician. Can you take a look at this? He reviewed the prescription and frowned. This doesn't look right. Who's the prescribing physician? I'd never heard the name before, but something about the prescription format looked familiar. Too familiar. I think we might have another Kevin Martinez situation, I told him. An hour later, we'd flagged 6 suspicious prescriptions from the same doctor. All expensive cancer medications. All for conditions that didn't match the prescribed treatments. Should we call the medical board? Dr. Chin asked. Already did. They're sending an investigator. As I watched the investigator collect the evidence, I thought about my mother's letter. About finding her real self again. About trust and forgiveness and the long road back from betrayal. But mostly, I thought about the patients who needed real help, with real medications, for real conditions. The patients who trusted their doctors to tell them the truth. That's what mattered now. Not the money I'd lost, or the years I'd wasted, or the mother I'd mourned who'd never actually been dying. What mattered was making sure no one else had to go through what I'd gone through. What mattered was the truth. I looked out the pharmacy window at the busy street beyond, full of people living their real lives, dealing with their real problems, loving their real families. For the first time in 3 years, I felt free. That night, I called David. Hey, I said when he answered. It's Natasha. Natasha. Wow. It's been, how long? 2 years. Look, I know this is out of nowhere, but I wanted to apologize. For disappearing. For not explaining why I couldn't commit to anything serious. He was quiet for a moment. The news stories about your family. I figured it was something like that. You knew. I suspected something was wrong. You were always stressed about money, always getting emergency calls. But I figured you'd tell me when you were ready. We talked for an hour. About the trial, about the lies, about the strange relief of finally knowing the truth. Would you like to get dinner sometime? He asked before we hung up. I'd like that. Good. And Natasha? For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. What you did took courage. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment, surrounded by the peace I'd bought with 2 years of heartbreak and $45,000 in stolen love. It was expensive peace, but it was mine. Outside, the city hummed with the sound of 8 million people living their lives, most of them honest, most of them trying their best, most of them loving their families without stealing from them. I was one of them now. I picked up my mother's latest letter, the 4th one I'd received, but the first one I'd actually finished reading. I got a second job, she'd written. Cleaning offices at night. I'm up to $75 a month now for repayment. At this rate, I'll have paid you back in full by the time I'm 87. I almost smiled at that. Almost. Maybe someday I'd write her back. Maybe someday I'd be ready to hear her voice again without feeling like I was talking to a stranger wearing my mother's face. But not today. Today, I was just going to sit in my honest apartment, surrounded by my honest furniture, planning my honest dinner with an honest man who'd waited 2 years for an explanation I'd finally been able to give him. Tomorrow, I'd go back to work at my real job, helping real patients with real medications for real conditions. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was my life. And, for the first time in years, that felt like enough. The phone rang one more time that night. My mother's number. I let it go to voicemail. Some conversations I'd learned weren't worth having. Some trust, once broken, couldn't be repaired. Some family, once they'd shown you who they really were, had to be believed. I was finally free to choose my own family now. And I was going to choose carefully. Very carefully indeed. What would you have done in my situation? Could you turn in your own parent for fraud, even if it meant destroying your family? And here's the bigger question. Do you think some relationships are worth saving no matter what, or are there lines that, once crossed, can never be uncrossed? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, if you dealt with family betrayal or had to make an impossible choice between loyalty and what's right, please share it with someone who might understand. Sometimes we all need to know we're not alone in these difficult decisions. Hit that like button if you think I made the right choice, or leave a comment if you think I should have handled it differently. Your perspective matters, and I read every single comment.